esteemed President Timothy Law Snyder, First Lady Carol Costello, Provost Thomas Poon, Chair of the Board of Trustees Paul Viviano, distinguished faculty, fellow administrators, beloved staff, dear family and friends, and the amazing graduate class of 2018. To you, our graduate class of 2018, we say congratulations on a job well done. And we also say thank you. In so many ways, graduate education is at the heart of this university. It is the quality and variety of our graduate programs that makes us who we are at LMU, a comprehensive university in the Jesuit and Marymount traditions with stellar academic programs at the bachelor's, master's, and the doctoral levels. As we look to our university's future with aspirations of growing our national standing, it is the graduate educational enterprise and you, our graduate education students and community, that will enhance our stature, reputation, and impact. When you started as graduate students at LMU several years ago, I had the privilege to speak to you as your graduate dean, and I congratulated you on beginning your post-baccalaureate educational career for choosing to invest in yourselves and your professional futures. As I shared with you, however, this investment would not simply be for your own benefit, but that your talents, your gifts, all the resources you've received are ultimately given to you to be used in the service of others, in your contributions to the common good of society. As Marian Wright Edelman, president and founder of the Children's Defense Fund, reminds us, education is for improving the lives of others and for leaving your community and your world better than how you found it. So today we recognize and celebrate your accomplishments. We also look forward to seeing how you will influence our world with the knowledge and skills you've acquired during your time at Loyola Marymount University. You've been educated in the Marymount and Jesuit ideals, and you will make a difference in this world as leaders, professionals, and academics, even though you might never fully know the impact you will have on others. So to illustrate this point, I'd like to share a story with you. Do we have any teachers graduating today? So like some of you graduating today, I started my first job after LMU as a teacher. And I'll never forget that first job. So as an undergrad here, I was a history major, and then a secondary education credential post-baccalaureate student after I received my bachelor's. The time was 1980. I was fortunate enough to be hired as a 7th grade teacher at St. Eugene Catholic School, situated on the border between Inglewood and Los Angeles, teaching 42 7th graders. I was 21 years old, and I looked like I was about 12. I only found out later that the pastor, the principal, and most of the teachers had a bet going on how long I would last. And it was everything from a few hours to a few weeks. Now, this 7th grade class was known as being a very difficult class, and they had given previous teachers a real run for their money. As a class, though, they struggled academically. They tested 2 years below grade level, and some of those 7th graders, their reading levels were as low as 2nd grade. So a few weeks into the start of the year, it just happened that the principal was walking by the 7th grade classroom right before recess. and was very surprised because the recess bell rang, and usually the doors open and all the kids ran out. And in this case, nothing happened. And the principal came bursting through the room saying to herself, "My God, what have they done to him?" And she found me in the middle of the room with the class huddled around me, and I was there with the overhead projector. I don't know if any of you ever even know what an overhead projector is, but that's what we used to use. And we were diagramming sentences. And she heard one of the students say, "Mr. Martin, can we just diagram one more sentence before we go out to recess?" Now, the principal almost fell over in shock, and while this was a Catholic school, all of the students in my class were students of color from difficult socioeconomic and life circumstances. She did not expect that those students would engage academically, and in truth, that had been their track record. The narrative that had accompanied these young people throughout their lives was that they were not smart, they could not learn, they would not succeed in life. In fact, I was warned about that class by several of their previous teachers. But I refused to believe that tired and worn-out narrative that their only option was school failure. I loved them and I challenged them. We worked very hard together, and at the end of the year, the class tested at grade level for the first time in their academic history. Together, we changed the narrative of failure to one of success. Now, just a footnote on that story. A couple of years ago, one of the biggest knuckleheads in that class looked me up, came to see me here. This was 38 years ago. And he came to thank me for giving him a D in conduct, which he said was the wake-up call that changed his entire life. You know, you just never know what impact you'll have on another person's life. Commencement is about celebration, and it's also about new beginnings. Today is primarily about recognizing the amazing accomplishments of this distinguished graduating class of 2018. But in fact, this ceremony speaks to everyone gathered here today. For the family, friends, and significant others of our graduates, today marks an opportunity to show our deep respect and admiration for those we love who are graduating. We have supported you and contributed to your success, and it's been our great joy to see this opportunity come to completion. For our LMU faculty, staff, and community members, today brings together all that we stand for in the academy, because the student-teacher, student-mentor relationship is at the heart of our work. In our graduating students, we see all of our hopes and dreams realized. We have shared our insights and knowledge with you, and now you're ready to leave this place and make us proud. And we can't wait to see what you're going to do. Graduates, today is your day, and it's one that looks to a bright and hopeful future. You're ready to go forth and set the world on fire with your passion, your care for others, innovation, creativity, entrepreneurship, and commitment to lifelong learning. Today, I invite each one of us to consider the power of the narrative of our lives and to realize three things. Our own stories are meaningful. They're filled with purpose. Our own stories are still being written. And until the last curtain comes down, we have the power to change the narrative. This is an extremely stimulating and provocative time to be alive, with so many forces that push us and pull us to become our best selves, to engage others, believe in ourselves, others, and our world. There are great opportunities and many challenges. Now, more than ever, we are called to make a difference. There is great joy in life, but also heartbreak. We live in many ways in a broken world living on a planet worn out by our own misuse and greed, in a country divided by hate and ignorance, exacerbated by vitriolic rhetoric that only intensifies the divide between the privileged and the less fortunate. But here's the deal. You've got to take a stand in life. You can't sit on the sidelines. Who we choose to stand with matters. As the Brazilian educator Paulo Freire said, washing one's hands of the conflict between the powerful and the powerless means to side with the powerful, not to be neutral. We are called to enter into and to embrace this world as business and school leaders, counselors, therapists, teachers, filmmakers, philosophers, ethicists, writers, engineers, theologians, accountants, humanists, and yogis. We are all called in our own way to change the narrative. Every day we're reminded that the world is changing around us. What matters most is how we interact with the inevitability of change. On the one hand is the old and tired narrative that might makes right, where power is used to threaten and intimidate, to divide people into winners and losers, to focus on differences of race, class, and gender by way of the politics of exclusion, most often to the detriment of those who have been traditionally held minority status. On the other hand, we have incredible moments of hope and inspiration coming from individuals and groups of people. And I'd like to offer just a few examples where courageous individuals, communities, and movements have dared to change the narrative. After the July 2013 acquittal of George Zimmerman for the murder of Trayvon Martin, Alicia Garza wrote on her Facebook, "Black people, I love you. I love us. Our lives matter. Black lives matter." Friend and fellow community organizer Patrice Coolers shared Alicia's message with the hashtag Black Lives Matter, also in part because of her own frustration with the brutalization her brother endured during his imprisonment in Los Angeles County jails. Along with Opal Tometi and DeRay Mickelson, they formed a movement that changed the narrative. In 2006, a 13-year-old girl confided to social activist and community organizer Tarana Burke that she had been sexually assaulted. Later, after reflecting on her own experience, Tarana started using the phrase that she actually wished she had said to that young girl, "Me too." In 2017, actress Alyssa Milano wrote a famous tweet in which she encouraged women who had been sexually harassed or assaulted to write "Me too" as a response. These courageous actions gave birth to the Me Too movement and the subsequent Time's Up movement. Millions of women have used the hashtag Me Too to tell their stories in multiple languages across the globe. Tarana and Alyssa changed the narrative. Pulitzer Prize winner and journalist Ronan Farrow, who spoke here yesterday as LMU's undergraduate commencement speaker, changed the narrative with his groundbreaking article in The New Yorker that uncovered the sexual abuse allegations of one of Hollywood's most powerful people. In September 2010, Billy Lucas from Greenburgh, Indiana, hung himself because he could no longer bear the bullying and torment he endured at the hands of classmates who told him he did not deserve to live because he appeared to be gay. When the news broke about Billy's suicide, America came to know about the deaths of at least 10 other gay or perceived to be gay teens who had committed suicide to escape the pain and torture perpetrated on them by classroom bullies. Syndicated columnist Dan Savage wrote in his weekly column, I wish I could have talked to Billy for just 5 minutes. I wish I could have told Billy that it gets better. I wish I could have told him that however bad things were, however isolated and alone he was, it gets better. Within a few months, the It Gets Better project evolved into a worldwide movement, and to date has inspired more than 500,000 user-created videos and over 50 million views, all throughout the world in multiple languages, including messages by former President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama, aimed at providing hope and encouragement to LGBTQ youth. It Gets Better changed the narrative. The traditional narrative said that despite mass shootings in the United States, from Columbine to Sandy Hook to the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, the interests of our gun lobby were too powerful to effect change. But after the tragic shooting at the Marjorie Douglas Stoneman High School in Parkland, Florida, a group of courageous high school students refused to accept the narrative and instead simply stated, "Never again." We know their names: Cameron, Alfonso, Jacqueline, David, Sarah, Emma, and others. They spoke out, they organized, they acted. Their efforts led to the March for Our Lives and began a dramatic change in the national conversation about gun violence and gun control. Don't let anyone ever tell you that today's young people are shallow, self-centered, and apathetic. These high school students are changing the narrative in this country even as we speak. There are so many other examples that I could give of hope and inspiration. Movements such as disability rights, neurodiversity, sustainability and care for our earth. Our DACA students are changing the narrative by their very existence. Our DACA students are among the most academically prepared and highly vetted group of immigrants we've ever had in this country. And their success and tenaciousness challenged the narrative about immigration. Pope Francis, when he was asked about gay people in the church, changed the narrative when he famously said, "Who am I to judge?" He also changed the narrative symbolically by washing the feet of women, Muslims, and prisoners during the Holy Thursday feet-washing ritual, in a ceremony where previously the popes had only washed the feet of the priests. One of his trademark notions is the culture of encounter, by which he calls us to encounter the other, to tear down walls rather than build them in our land and on our borders, to engage, to reach out, to foster dialogue and friendship, not simply with people we know and we like and we get along with, but those who are different from us, those who are not in our social circles, those who are marginalized by the larger society. Pope Francis gives us a call for love and mercy rather than condemnation and judgment. And it's another example of changing the narrative. Graduates, as we sit here today on this beautiful campus in the great state of California, I'm reminded that in so many ways in California, we are changing the narrative. In his recent book, State of Resistance, University of Southern California professor of sociology, Manuel Pastor, reminds us that it wasn't that long ago that California was viewed as a broken state, mired in debt and bogged down in the politics of acrimony and exclusion. And as Pastor notes, a series of divisive propositions, a painful gubernatorial recall election, a legislature at odds with itself and the governor, the meltdown of our economy, all of this led to several decades of escalation in California of the politics of fear, austerity, and resentment, which harmed us and made it seem that the early promise of the Golden State would come to a crashing halt, as noted in a recent book review on this book by the New York Times. But Californians have changed the narrative. There's certainly many issues to solve, but today we have a functional government that's actively working for the common good of this state. And I had the privilege of seeing this firsthand as I sat in Sacramento 10 years as a commissioner on the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing. In California, we might seem to be countercultural compared with the narrative in most of the rest of the country. And Pastor believes there are two major reasons for our recent successes: innovative public-private partnerships and on-the-ground progressive social movements that have challenged the power of corporate interests and have worked to address issues of equality and inequality by race, gender, and socioeconomic status. In other words, in California, we are moving away from the politics of divisiveness towards the politics of inclusion. And in that, we are changing the narrative. And so, my dear graduates, how will you change the narrative? In the Jesuit tradition, hope springs eternal. Even mortal enemies can find a way forward, as we're seeing with South and North Korea. It takes great courage to change the narrative and to believe that hope and change is possible and to be willing to serve as agents of change. As former First Lady Michelle Obama said in a speech to the Young African Women Leaders Forum, "You may not always have a comfortable life, and you will not always be able to solve all the world's problems, and certainly not all at once. But don't ever underestimate the impact you can have, because history has shown us that courage can be courageous and hope can take a life of its own." So we are Lions. We are Loyola Marymount University, a 107-year-old institution whose story, whose narrative is grounded in the Marymount CSJ and Jesuit traditions. Graduates, you are Jesuit educated, and that stands for something powerful. You join the ranks of thousands of Jesuit alumni throughout the United States and even more throughout the world, who, for over the last 500 years, have shared a common set of values and principles. So today is time to celebrate with family and friends, to take pictures, and when you post them on social media, in addition to hashtag LMU18, I want to see hashtag Jesuit educated after every one. So go forth, celebrate, have fun today, and change the narrative with your LMU degree. Thank you, and go Lions!